Okay, in this tutorial we're going to look at how to use Fusion's offset tool, which is a very useful method of creating clearance, which you can see here between your any kind of part that you are designing and a recess or somewhere where that part is going to fit inside. Okay, so here's an example of that, what it will look like in the end. Let's look at how it's created. So you just go over here, create a new file. First thing I want to do is actually create a couple of parameters. And one parameter will be for the clearance. That's the gap. And I'll just set a clearance value of 0.5 millimeter. And then another parameter I will set is for the thickness of the base of the game. I'll set that to 9. And I'll also set another thickness for parts, and that will make that let's say 6. Okay, so we've got a couple of variables set there, and then the next thing I want to do is just start actually with a component. If you think about this game that's been created here, essentially it's in two components, two parts. The first component is going to be the board, and the second components are going to be these pieces or parts. So I'll begin with a component, and I'll call that component the board. And you see it's activated by default. I'm going to go back up to the top level here of the browser and create another component. And this one will be for parts. And this is going to keep my browser nice and clean. Okay, so let's go back to board and activate that component and create a sketch here. The sketch, I'll just choose a rectangle here. And you see I haven't dimensioned it yet. I'll press D for dimension. And we'll say it's about 80 millimeters high. And dimension the length there to be about 140. Like that. Okay. And then I will just go to the home view, press E for extrude, and then bring that up. So I have set a parameter for general thickness of the board. So I'll use that. I just type in thickness, and that's going to be a body because it's already inside its own component. So I just click OK. And of course, I'll use F on the keyboard just to quickly fillet these edges for safety. So I've got one there, another one here. Just wanted me to choose the fillet. So, and of course, I want to round off the corners, so we use the fillet command, F, and go around and select the edges that I need to fillet. Let's set that at say 3. Looks like I forgot one over here, so I'll just cancel that operation here and move around. You see I have 2 edges selected there. Grab the other edges, 3 now, 4 now, and go back to 3. All those have been selected. Go back home. So board looks pretty good so far. Let's go ahead and add an appearance. Press A, and the board will be made with MDF. Just type into my library here and drag on that appearance like so. Okay, so far so good. And I have an SVG file that I'm going to use for these tools. Yeah. So I want to first of all begin that process by creating a sketch on top of the board. And then I will insert onto there the SVG file. Let's go ahead and find it. So my downloads here, there it is, click open. Okay, I'll just zoom out so you can see it. It's anchored it here right to the origin. So I'm going to have to rotate it around. So bring it around here, and then I'll move it up into position. So you can use this little, when you bring in your SVG, you've got options for how you can scale. So I've just done that there. And move it into position. So I'm just going to give a little bit more space around the outsides of the tools, like so. Yeah, that looks about right. Click OK. And you'll see now I have the SVG here. Now there's a problem with this SVG. I'll just turn off on the board the body so we can only see the SVG. And you can see here that if I try and work with this graphic, it's a bit troublesome. So the others are pretty fine. They've got nice lines that overlap like the saw. So I can fix that very easily using the trim command. So you press T, and T allows you to go in and just remove or trim parts that you don't need. So in my case, I'm trimming it up. I want to just keep the general shapes nice and smooth, no overlapping lines here. So I'm pretty happy with that so far. And now what I want to do is demonstrate the use of the offset feature. And that's activated with the letter O. So if I press the letter O, the offset appears. You want to make sure that chain selection is ticked, and then you can select what you want to offset. So you can see by default, I can use this little drag slider here, that red is going to be the offset value. So you can see that it's increasing. Now, at the start, you saw that I set a parameter for the clearance. So I'm using the offset tool to create a gap or some clearance. So I don't have to, I'll just put in the parameter that I set, clearance, and then I'll click OK. So I have some clearance. I'll press the letter O and I'll repeat for the other remaining objects, making sure to use the parameter. Okay, so now you can see we have a little space that we can work with, some clearance for these tools. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is before I push these into the board, I'm actually going to activate the parts layer. So I'll just say over here, activate parts, and you'll see I'm still able to access the sketch that was done on the board layer. And I'm going to now extrude these inner profiles. And so I'll press E and make sure I'm touching the inner profile. So I can do all of them at once, as you can see here. And as you remember, hopefully, I also have a parameter for my part thickness. So I'm going to just choose thickness parts, and it quickly gives them a 3D dimension. Click OK. So we are seeing the parts now on the part on that as part of this component. And so what I want to do now is go back to my board. I'll activate that one. I'll close the parts and make sure I can see the board body. And also I want to see the sketch that was made on the board, as you can see here. So now my operation will be to recess. As you can see here, I'll turn off these parts. I want to create this recess here where the parts will sit inside. And that's going to be using the extrude command. This time though, I'm going to select the gap plus the profile, that's the inner profile. Again, I can go around and select all of these carefully. I'm zooming in and out using the trusty mouse. And this time I want to bring this down into the board. And I think a value of -3 should be good. And it's going to be a cut operation, that's correct. Press OK. So I'll just, to make it a bit cleaner, I'll turn off the sketch now. And you can see here, I've actually left behind the inside of the handle, this little inside of the spanner and the screwdriver. I don't want that. I want these parts to fit in nice and clean, you can see here. So I will actually go back here and edit this extrude. And then I'll also select some other profiles to push down, these ones that I forgot, and put them down -3, click OK. Now I have a nice space for the tools to fit. Go back home here. Let's go up to the top layer, turn on my parts, and go and activate the top layer. So I'll see both the board component and my parts. And you can see now, we're going a bit closer, there is a gap here. Now these parts are actually floating above the board. So just to give it an authentic look, I'll just click on the parts. I'll press the letter M for move and make sure that I'm moving components. It's going to be all of these components at once. I'll choose this Y vector. And again, I'll go down the value of the recess, which in my case is -3. Click OK. Back home, back to the top level. Now you can see how those parts are fitting nicely, and there's a nice space around here. So what if we find that there's actually not enough room? It looks okay on the screen, but when we test it out, it's just a little bit tight. Okay, or what if we find that we need these parts to be a bit thicker? And that's where our parameters come in. So we can go back to the parameters here. We set the clearance at 0.5 of a millimeter. So let's say we need to just, increase it a little, say 0.8, and you'll see it will be adjusted. The other thing is we have the thickness of the board is 9, and let's just say the thickness of the parts, they're not quite thick enough. So we have 11 millimeter pine wood in the studio, so I'll put in 11 millimeters, and watch what happens in the background. All the parts are quickly adjusted, and there you have it. That is a demonstration of using the offset tool to create some clearance in your design.